What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is Decoding with Cody, and today is September 21st, 2025. And today we have a good stream for you guys. It's going to be super interesting, super in depth. And with me today, I have my good friend from Gematinator 85, Derek. Derek, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty well, Cody. Glad to be back on with you for this ongoing topic that we keep covering, but a very important one that has a lot of synchronistic elements with it, and we'll be exploring some of the deeper ones here today.
Yeah, absolutely. This isn't a normal story where you just get one or two videos on it. It's definitely deserves lots of coverage, in my opinion, especially after watching the huge funeral today. Somebody that gets a stadium full of people at his service. So the energy harvesting seems to be at an all-time high, uh, and definitely we got lots to talk about. So in this video, as you guys can see by the title, it's going to be mainly on the theme of Back to the Future and how this whole Charlie Kirk thing ties into that. So let's take about a minute or two. Let me say hi to some people in the chat, and then I'm going to get into the info, and then Derek's going to take it away after that. So you guys can hear us, right? Give us a thumbs up if you could hear both of us. I'm assuming no one said anything, so no news is good news. But yeah, hello to Jesse's girl. Hello to Maggie McCombs and Sojourn. Thank you for the thumbs up. Hello to JJ Recon, Pat Murphy, Sports Lounge. Yeah, that seems to be most people. Karen King. Hello to all of you guys. Bones Jones. So thanks everyone for showing up tonight. And again, we'll jump into the chat more at the end and take some of your guys' observations as usual. But since we already have 93 of you in here, let's go ahead and get ready to jump in. And thank you to all the 93 that are already here. And don't forget to hit those like buttons if you appreciate the content. So let's go ahead and start with today's news, because I'm going to lead into this actually before I even get into my slides. Let me unshare my screen real fast. And I'm going to bring up, let's see. We're going to listen to Trump speaking at the funeral today. And this is going to kind of lead into this whole subject on Chicago, okay? Back to the Future and Chicago. This is going to be the kind of the overarching theme. And considering that Trump just today was speaking at Charlie Kirk's funeral, Turning Point, right, which we're going to talk about. And there's not many people more connected to Back to the Future than Trump. In fact, a lot of people, when they think Back to the Future, what's the first thing that comes in your mind? Probably Trump. That's what I think of. So just listen to Trump speaking on Chicago and Charlie Kirk, and then we're going to get into the slides. So here we go. And let me know, Derek and everyone else, if you guys can't hear this. You should be able to hear it. But here we go.
So much. Raised in the suburbs of Chicago, Charlie was filled with a patriotic spirit from his youth, and he was an all-American in everything he did. And one of the last things he said to me is, "Please, sir, save Chicago." We're going to do that. We're going to save Chicago from horrible crime.
All right. Short and sweet. But you guys heard it. So big theme is we're going to save Chicago. That was Charlie's request, right? And of course, that's because Charlie is from Chicago. As he mentioned, Charlie grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, an athlete, supposedly, which connects us to the sports of Chicago, which in my last stream, if you guys watched, I showed you some pretty incredible things that Charlie's last tweet or his whole post about the Chicago Bears actually equaled the same as his last words. Did you see that, Derek? I sent that to you.
Yeah, the 489, correct.
Yeah, I thought that was absolutely wild, considering also that the Chicago Cubs equals 489. And but yeah, so that introduction, hopefully you guys can understand how this is going to tie into Chicago more, because Trump is literally saying that one of the next cities he's going to go in and clean up from gang violence. And remember, Charlie's last words was not counting gang violence. And that takes us right back to Chicago, which is considered the highest gang violence in the United States, supposedly. So, all right, so we're going to go back to the slides. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, and real quickly, I think it's worth mentioning that Charlie's funeral today was held at the home of the NFL's Arizona Cardinals. Of course, Charlie moved from Chicago to Arizona to marry Miss Arizona. And the Arizona Cardinals used to be located in Chicago. The team was the Chicago Cardinals way back in the day.
Yeah, and this is something Derek just shared with me before the stream. And so think about that, guys. The Chicago, can you hear me, Derek?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. The Chicago Cardinals, as Derek just mentioned, here you go, originally were the Chicago Cardinals, but now they're the Arizona Cardinals. And again, what stadium was Trump just speaking in? The clip I just showed you was in the Arizona Cardinals stadium. Of course, the Cardinal is connected to the Catholic Church, the Cardinal, right? And we're going to talk about Pope Leo, who was a Cardinal at one point. So, yeah, I mean, is there anything else you want to add with that, Derek, about the Chicago Cardinals?
Not really. Just the big Catholic Church thing that you mentioned. Of course, Chicago is the home to Pope Leo XIV, who was now the first American to be the Bishop of Rome over there in Italy. And Charlie Kirk and the Pope are completely synced up to the numbers of Back to the Future, as we'll see.
Right. And yeah, just so you can see on the same page, guys, it says right here, the team was established in Chicago on September and joined on September 17th. That's interesting.
That's the founding date of the NFL, yeah.
Yeah. And they're 127 years. Huh. That was a huge number. Assassinate equals 127. That was a huge number we covered in our first video that we did. But yeah, so considering all that, guys, considering Trump's speech on Chicago in the stadium of the former Chicago team, with all that in mind, let's jump into my slides. And then Derek's going to take over here in a little bit. And so we're going to cover Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump, The Turning Point, and Back to the Future. And then Derek's going to cover a wild synchronicity with the Chicago Cubs and one of their former players. So let's just cover the basic things of how this is numerically connected to Back to the Future, and quite clearly. And we've already pointed this out in prior streams, but this is worth reiterating. So considering that Trump is obviously tied to Back to the Future, and Trump equals 88, I didn't put that here, but don't forget Trump equals 88. And this shooting of Charlie Kirk from Chicago happened 88 days after Trump's birthday, which was also No King's Day, which was also King Charles' celebrated birthday this year. And so 88 days, and Turning Point USA equals 88. So this is the first big number that we think of when we think of Back to the Future. Now, big shout out to this channel, Farming from Scratch on YouTube. I'm pretty sure he's the first one to point this out. There's a logo that, and make sure you guys go check out his channel. He's been doing a lot of videos covering some pretty interesting stuff. So here's his channel right here, Farming from Scratch. But he pointed out that the button, or the thing that Marty is wearing, looks a lot like, and I know this is a blurry picture, I'll make it more big in a minute, but it looks a lot like the same type of design as the Turning Point logo. And the way that Marty is wearing it in the movie, it looks even more like it, because see how the blue is kind of curving on the bottom side, and then you have the arrow turning red. Well, that's essentially the direction that Marty is wearing this. the red arrows pointing kind of back towards to the right. So, it's kind of this same theme. And just to make it more, I thought I had. Okay, so before we get to the Chicago Cubs thing, I also noticed before the stream, considering this is all connected to Charlie Kirk in Chicago, the Chicago Cubs logo is, well, first of all, it's red and blue, just like the other two logos. But look at the Chicago Cubs logo. It is a kind of a half circle as well, which could also be kind of similar to that. I'm not saying this one is 100% similar, but it definitely has the same theme. And this one, here's the logo that Marty's wearing in his in the movie, as I showed here. But just an up close look at it. And in the movie, it's flipped, so it's hard to get it to look exactly like this, but there is a lot of similarity. And this triangle looks like the arrow, right? And of course, in Back to the Future, the Chicago Cubs, and Derek's going to get more into this, but the Chicago Cubs are a subject in the series because when they travel to the future in the second movie, they go to the year 2015, where the Chicago Cubs have won the World Series, which is a joke because they had gone 108 years without winning the World Series. And then they ended up winning it in real life in 2016, not so far off from the Back to the Future theme. So,
and it's worth pointing out, too, that the date in Back to the Future that they travel to where the Cubs win the World Series, I believe they were eliminated from the playoffs in 2015 on that exact date. And then a year later, they won the World Series.
So they were eliminated on 10/26/2015, right?
I think it was 10/21.
Oh, 10/21.
I have to double check, but yeah.
Well, 10/21 is Back to the Future Day. And that's also Netanyahu's birthday. So that's super interesting as well. I did a whole video about Netanyahu and how he's connected to this and to the Pope. Maybe some of you guys saw that, but so now we're going to get into what I believe is the real symbolism here of why Turning Point USA seems to have the perfect gematria to go with this theme. So in the movie, the date that they go 88 miles per hour and travel back is October 26th. And October 26th is written 10/26. So 10/26 is the date. And look at Turning Point USA, 10/26. And in reduction, Turning Point USA, 88. So they travel 88 miles an hour on 10/26. And you got both those gematrias here, okay? And not only did you get 10/26 out of Turning Point USA, you also get 10/26 out of the phrase on Charlie's tent, prove me wrong. So a double 10/26. And I want you guys to think about this. In the Back to the Future films, the turning point is literally 10/26 because up until that date, the future and the timeline is going normally, right? It's going forward, right? So in this case, with this arrow, it's going towards the right, making progressions. Or actually, I guess in this case, you'd be saying it'd be going left because in the United States, we write right to left. So that's actually forward. Left is forward. So in this case, you'd be going forward, but you're going to have a turning point, right? So in the movie, 10/26 is the day of the turning point because what happens on 10/26, they're going forward, and then all of a sudden they travel 88 miles and they're going back. So literally the turning point is 10/26. So I think if you guys really wrap your heads around that, it's pretty mind-blowing considering the Back to the Future symbolism and how all this seems to line up, especially with the symbols and with Marty wearing this very similar tag, and then the Cubs being so connected to this, also having this kind of symbol, right?
And like you mentioned to me earlier, the date October 26th, oct means 8, and then 2 + 6 is 8. So that date has an 88 encoded in it as well.
Yeah, and I actually came to that conclusion like after I put this slide together, and then I was like, wow, I didn't get a chance to add this, but yeah, guys, oct is 8, like Derek mentioned, and 26 numerology is 8, 2 + 6. So literally, yeah, that's probably why they chose that date. that's the 8-8 right there. And I don't know if I've ever seen really one. I'm sure someone's seen that before, but me personally, I've never dawned on me. So now that we've set up the logos, we've set up Trump talking about Chicago, the gang violence, coming in to save Chicago. Now it's worth mentioning that we just had the 88-year-old Pope die this year and was replaced by the guy from Chicago. And as Derek has mentioned many times, the importance of this 88 in Chicago is that Chicago falls along the 88th degree west. So this I think is like the key part, because this latitude tells you about how Chicago is really tied to the 88 miles an hour. And the Pope that just took over, obviously being from there and replacing a Pope who died at 88. So like, and then we get the death of this other guy this year. The two guys, main themes of this year are going to be Pope Leo taking over and Charlie Kirk getting taken out. Well, these two characters, as Derek has mentioned already in his videos, are born 457 months apart, guys. Exactly. So 457 months exactly, which that is an important number because 457 is the 88th prime number. How about that? So the two guys born in Chicago on the 88th parallel are born 457 months apart, the 88th prime. And then just adding to the fact that he died 88 days after Trump's birthday, and his company equals that, and, just add that to there. But here's the part of this decode that I'm most mind blown about, and I shared with Derek last week. And hopefully you guys can understand this. So let me kind of break this down. So we have the two dates for Back to the Future. We have the original movie release, and we have the original time travel date, the turning point date, which is October 26th. And first of all, Chicago, Illinois, this all centers around Chicago, Illinois, which equals 145, okay, in basic ordinal gematria, 145. So you have these two dates, the time travel date, or the movie date, and the time travel date. If you go from the movie release and you follow this line I made here, and you go to the inauguration mass of the guy from Chicago, Pope Leo, it's 14564 days. And guys, that just happens to be the gematria of time travel. So just look at it, guys. It's even in the right order with the way Derek lays out the calculator. I mean, it's not like necessarily the rule of thumb that you lay the calculator out with reverse being like this and reverse reduction, but just the way like these two ciphers are perfectly coded into this is just mind-blowing, because time travel is literally the amount of days. So not only that, the other guy from Chicago who got taken out, if you go from, so I just showed you from the release of the movie to the Pope's inauguration mass is 14564, like time travel. But if you go from the actual turning point date in the movie, the time travel, to the shooting, it's the same amount of days, 14564, which again is the gematria of time travel. Now, notice that the word Catholic is pretty much the same, and we know how the rule of reversal works, where 46 is actually just the backwards 64. So, and the 145s, right? Chicago, Illinois, 145, Catholic 145, time travel 145. And don't forget, Chicago sits on the 88th parallel, and you need 88 miles an hour to time travel. So again, this is pretty mind-blowing to me in general, just this slide here. And it kind of proves the fact that all these events are specifically tied. On top of that, that means that because these dates are so closely related with how they line up, because of that, the 115 days is also important. So between the movie release and the time travel date is 115 days. So that also means that between Pope Leo's inauguration mass to the killing of Kirk is 115 days. And this points us to the date they travel back to. They travel back to 11/5, guys. So the days between these two sets of events points us to the date they travel back to, which just happens to be the day that Trump won the election, which just happens to be the famous Guy Fawkes Day, where the Jesuits tried to assassinate King James. And it also happens to be in the same year that Pope Leo was born, on top of all that, which I've already shown many times. But just think about how all this is perfect. This one slide right here is, if you really comprehend it, it's absolutely mind-blowing how these measurements take us to this number, which takes us right here. And it connects us perfectly to Pope Leo, because that's the year he was born.
In the alphabetic order, Charles Kirk equals 115. And of course, in reverse and in Latin, the word killing equals 115. So it just falls together great.
Yep. Let me just pull that up just so people can see. Charles Kirk, 115. If you spell it right, Kirk 115, and then killing, killing 115. Also Lucifer. So you got those 115s. And again, that's the day of the election last year. That's Guy Fawkes Day, a very famous day. Remember the 5th of November. So it's almost kind of funny. They're wanting us, by giving us all these dates here, they're wanting us to remember the 115 date, which again, this is the date. And this is where I'm going to kind of stop. But just to end the riddle here and let Derek take over for the Chicago theme. Another interesting fact is that if you measure from the day they travel from to the day they travel back to, it's 10,948 days, which without the zero is 1948. Now, 1948, oh, I forgot that assassin equaled 115 as well. Yeah, that's a good addition, Joseph. So yeah, 115 is assassin. So that he was assassin killed him 115 days after Pope Leo's inauguration mass.
I don't know if you noticed, but Robert Zemeckis, who wrote and directed Back to the Future, he was born on May 14th, on Israel's 4th anniversary.
Yeah.
After they were established in 1948.
So yeah, so now that you're mentioning that, it would be very helpful if you guys go back to my video from early this year where I have a thumbnail. I don't remember what it's called, but it has a thumbnail of Robert Zemeckis and Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Pope Leo. Because I covered that earlier this year where I showed that Zemeckis, man, I wish I could go back to that video right now because there's a lot of supplemental information that would tie perfectly into this. But I'll have to, maybe at the end we'll cover that more. But 1948 is also, as you mentioned, Derek, the year that Israel was founded. And that's also the year that King Charles was born. And
there's been a lot of people saying that Charlie may have been shot because he started to question what Israel was doing in Gaza too. So it's definitely relevant.
Well, it is 100% relevant because Candace Owens is pushing this, and Candace Owens is going to be one of the main people I think you're going to see end up coming out of this as being, she's pushing that. She's pushing the Israel thing. Yeah. So there is 100% no doubt that this is connected to Israel and of course Chicago. But yeah, so the 1948 being there points to Israel, but we're going to let Derek continue with the Chicago theme, knowing what we know now about all these basic connections with the 88s and the logo of Turning Point, and then of course the 1026. So yeah, Derek, let me get your screen up. So guys, just keep this in mind as Derek's going through his of why we're talking about the Chicago event that just happened with the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, so on the same day that Charlie Kirk was killed, September 10th, former Cubs star Anthony Rizzo announced his official retirement from Major League Baseball. And Anthony Rizzo was born on the date 8/8, August 8th. In fact, it was just 1 year after the year 88. 89 is also the year of the Back to the Future sequel. And this is the man who ended the 2016 World Series with it was a ground ball. They threw the ball to first. Anthony Rizzo made the final out at first base. and that was in the year 16, which is the sum of 8 plus 8. So on the same day Kirk gets killed, Rizzo retires, and then 3 days later, the Cubs honor Anthony Rizzo because even though he was with the Yankees at the time, he decided to retire with the Chicago Cubs, where he won a World Series. And while he was at that game on the 13th, something truly magical happened as Anthony Rizzo was shown here in the bleachers at Wrigley Field with the common folk, just hanging out with the fans. And you'll notice this happened in the bottom of the second with 1 out, nothing on the count. So immediately after the television shows this, the very next pitch is thrown to this guy, Moises Ballesteros. And Ballesteros hits a home run directly to Anthony Rizzo. And of course, Rizzo wears his 44 jersey. That's half of 88. But as you look forward, we learn that here he is, right? The ball literally hits him in the hand, but he drops it and it goes to someone else. So I started thinking that's amazing, especially considering that this was Moises Ballesteros' first career home run. He never hit a home run before this at bat. And his first home run is hit directly to Anthony Rizzo. And I thought that's wild because not only, well, first let's look at his last name, Ballesteros. Now, in Spanish, Ballesteros means crossbowman or archer, which I thought was perfect because this guy hit Anthony Rizzo like a bullseye in the bleachers. Well, as far as his first name, Moises, this is another name that stood out to me because it's heavily connected to the Chicago Cubs. Now, if you ask Google, for instance, for MLB players named Moises, you see Moises Ballesteros here, but the other one is Moises Alou. And Moises Alou played for the Chicago Cubs. There's only 3 guys named Moises ever in Major League history, and this is the most well-known one right here. So as you can see, he spent some time with the Cubs during the middle of his career. But what makes this so fascinating is that Moises Alou was involved in one of the most famous plays in baseball history. Back in 2003, the Cubs were making a run to the World Series for the first time in over 50 years. And this was 13 years before they did win the World Series. So the Cubs are leading the Florida Marlins 3-2, and they're up by 3 runs in the 8th inning. And this foul ball gets hit to Moises Alou, but Moises could not make the catch because the ball bounced off the hands of a Cubs fan. See that? And just like Anthony Rizzo in the bleachers, Steve Bartman dropped the ball after it hit his hand. So there's this mystical connection between Anthony Rizzo returning to Wrigley and, in a way, recreating this play. This was called the Bartman ball. This whole thing has its own Wikipedia page. The Steve Bartman incident, it's known as. And look at the date of this incident. The Steve Bartman incident, October 14th of 2003. Well, October 14th happens to be the birthday of Charlie Kirk, which means that event happened on his 10th birthday. And of course, there's been a lot of, pushback from the right against the left for this. Don't forget that George Floyd, whose death similarly sparked a lot of protests and outrage, he was also born on October 14th. So there's this strong connection here, right? The ball going off his hand. The guy's name is Archer, essentially. And it's all connected to a different Moises involved in this play. So this play back in 2003, which led to the Cubs ended up losing the series against the Marlins. Well, in the movie Back to the Future, when they travel to the year 2015, the Cubs defeat the Miami Gators in the World Series. Now, it's important to note that at the time, Miami did not have a baseball team. This was a new franchise. So the fact that the Cubs were playing against the team from Miami in this series really stood out. Now, immediately after this play, The Cubs start letting a lot of base runners on base, and it culminates with this error. And let's see if I can find this real quick, but there's a... Might be up ahead here. But there's a double play that gets hit to this guy, and he moves the ball. He completely drops it. Well, this shortstop, you can't see it there, but that was number 8, Alex Gonzalez. And after that happened, the Marlins scored 8 runs in the 8th inning. And again, this is all happening right along the 88th meridian.
Oh, Derek, just to interrupt you. JM2 in the chat says the Moises Alou Steve Bartlett play was the turning point in the series. Wow.
That's a great point, and it absolutely was. The Cubs were definitely on their way to win it, and this changed the whole game, changed the whole series. Next thing you know, the Cubs were sitting on the couch watching the World Series.
Wow, that's just a great. I'm glad that people in the chat are bringing that kind of stuff up, because that's just like everything I just talked about, and then once Derek's revealing this, it really just fits so perfect, man. Great point.
So Anthony Rizzo has this 8/8 birthday, like I mentioned. Well, look at Moises Ballesteros' birthday. It's November 8th. And of course, 88 is 11 times 8. This dude's birthday is 11/8. And the whole reason the Cubs couldn't win the World Series for over 100 years was because of the curse of the Billy Goat, which has gematria of 88, like Turning Point USA. And when the Cubs did win the World Series, they did it with 8 runs, and it was 8 different players getting an RBI, which I think had never happened in postseason history. So there's a little clever 88 coded into there as well. Another 88 is a word called aniadeca and this is the Greek word for the Metonic cycle. Now, the Metonic cycle is a period of exactly 19 years, and 19 is the 8th prime number. And Moises Alou was born exactly 19 years, or 1 Metonic cycle, before the release of Back to the Future. See how Alou was born on July 3rd of 66? Whereas Back to the Future was released on July 3rd, exactly 1 Metonic cycle later. So we also mentioned Robert Zemeckis. This is the man who wrote and directed Back to the Future. Well, of course, Zemeckis was born in Chicago, Illinois. And when Anthony Rizzo dropped the home run ball that was hit by the other player named Moises, look how old Robert Zemeckis was. He was a span of exactly 880 months old. The guy who created the movie Back to the Future has the 88 in his age for this event. Also, when you write out Back to the Future, it equals 176, which is simply 88 plus 88. You also got to appreciate the 870, because when the Cubs won the World Series, they did it by a score of 8-7. What we need to do is take a step back and understand the larger riddle with Anthony Rizzo, because Anthony Rizzo was a graduate of a well-known high school in Florida called Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. Well, all the way back in the year 2018, there was a mass shooting at this school in Parkland, Florida. And it was all over the news. This was actually the event that got my first YouTube channel deleted. But I don't want to dive too deep into that right now. But just check this out. This high school was named after an activist named Marjory Stoneman Douglas. And of course, Charlie Kirk was famous for being an activist. Marjory was an activist for the Florida Everglades to try and save nature in Florida. When you write out Marjory Stoneman Douglas, she has matching 91 gematria with Anthony Vincent Rizzo, his full name. In Back to the Future, the main character, Martin Seamus Marty McFly, sums to 91. That's his full name in the film. The director of the movie, Robert Zemeckis, his last name is 91 in ordinal. And for this Bartman ball, right, the ball that Moises Alou failed to catch and Steve Bartman interfered, this ball was off the bat of a batter named Luis Castillo. And we'll talk more about him later. But Luis Castillo, his last name equals 91, just like Zemeckis. Well, if you measure from this dropped baseball to this dropped baseball, it was exactly 91 mercurial years later. And Mercury is important because that's the planet with an 88-day orbital period. So what are the odds from these two events? Exactly 91 mercurial years. And in the alphabetic order, Chicago Cubs equals 91. Chicago equals 91 in two ciphers. And Chicago, Illinois is also 91. But not only was this 91 mercurial years after the Bartman ball, but this game was also exactly a span of 91 months after the Stoneman Douglas shooting, which again was Anthony Rizzo's alma mater, where he went to high school. Rizzo's dropped home run was also exactly 328 months after Marjorie Stoneman Douglas died. And she, of course, died at the age of 108, which was the number of years between Cubs World Series victories. She also passed away on May 14th, which is the birthday of Robert Zemeckis, the creator of the film. And this 328 here, that's the gematria of Chicago, Illinois in Latin. And as you mentioned, the date 14/5, which was the day Stoneman Douglas died, that matches Chicago, Illinois, and Catholic. So what this means is that Marjorie Stoneman Douglas died on Robert Zemeckis' 46th birthday. And 46 is the value of both Chicago in ordinal and Chicago Cubs in reduction. But notice how the name Marty McFly, the main character in Back to the Future, his name is also 46 and 136. Well, if you measure from Robert Zemeckis' birthday to Anthony Rizzo's, not only is it 460 lunar phases, but it's exactly 13,600 days. So it's like Anthony Rizzo is playing the Marty McFly in real life, so to speak. These two guys also have matching ordinal gematria to boot. So these alignments here are just staggering. And we're only looking at three characters so far: Rizzo, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and Robert Zemeckis. Now, if you measure from the release date of Back to the Future to the birth of Anthony Rizzo, we get another very important number, because he was born a span of exactly 214 weeks after the film's initial release. Well, 214 or February 14th was the date of the shooting at his high school. And here we have Rizzo almost catching a home run in the bleachers. Both of those words equal 214. This game was also 7 years, 7 months exactly after the Parkland shooting. Parkland equals 77 in ordinal. So there's a few other things worth mentioning. All of this is on my blog, which you can access straight from gematrinator.com. But what we're going to learn also is how this is all numerically linked to Charlie Kirk. Look how old Charlie Kirk was for the Stoneman Douglas high school shooting. 8,889 days. Now, of course, you have a lot of eights there, the number of focus today. But this also reflects Anthony Rizzo's birthday, 8/8/89. Kirk's exact age for that shooting. And then when Rizzo goes to the game, it was on the 13th of September, or 139. And think about the various pushes for gun control in the aftermath of both of these events. gun control equals 139, just like the name Kirk. So there's some more interesting connections between Rizzo and Charlie. They were born 218 weeks apart. The Parkland shooting happened in the year 2018. 218 is also the gematria of both Steve Bartman incident, which once again, this was all a recreation of, and also Turning Point USA, 218 ordinal. And you'll like this one, Cody. When Turning Point USA was founded in 2012, it was exactly 1,405 weeks after Back to the Future came out. And once again, Chicago, Illinois, and time travel, just like the word Catholic.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, if you guys remember my slides, you guys are gonna. That goes perfect. Yeah, that's. I didn't know that. That was a good one.
So what I kind of want to do here to get to the back end of this video, this is all a tribute to the mathematics of the circle. And this is something I focus on a lot on my channel, the Gematrinator 85 YouTube channel. Constantly, I explore how big news stories are embedded with the geometry of the circle, which is extremely well expressed in the English language. It's kind of it's kind of something that a lot of people don't catch on to right away. But the reason I believe gematria was affirmed is because in my initial research, I started to notice how well the math of the circle was coded into the language. So I just want to look at a few examples of this, because we talked about the number 1026 as this is the date on which they originally traveled back in time from, October 26th. Well, when you write out mathematics of the circle, you get this value of 1026 as well. Now, Anthony Rizzo was born 10 months and 26 days before the release date of Back to the Future, July 3rd. And when he had this home run ball bounce off his hands, he was 10 months and 26 days before his birthday. Well, this hitter right here, Luis Castillo, who hit the ball into the hands of Steve Bartman in the crowd, Luis Castillo was 10,260 days old when he hit that foul ball. And that was the turning point of the series. Turning Point USA, 1026. Prove me wrong, 1026. But here's another 1026. This new Moises, who hit the ball to Anthony Rizzo last weekend, he was born 10 years and 26 days after Charlie Kirk.
Like, just to say something real fast, like, I hope people are following. In order to really grasp this stream, guys, you got to watch from the beginning through this whole thing to just really grasp how really crazy all this is, considering what I showed and now what Derek's showing, especially with these 1026s. And then here comes Joseph in here with another addition. Donnie Darko was released on 1026 as in the US. And we know Donnie Darko also has the same theme as Back to the Future, really. I mean, it's got similar connections. And I'm going to, at the end of this, I might even bring up a wrestler who's trending right now, who's been in the main theme right now, CM Punk from Chicago. I'm going to bring up him towards the end, I think, just a bit, but I could have tied him in super into this. I just didn't have time to do much more looking. But this guy, look, he's 46 right now, too. Yeah, so this guy right here with his wife have been big in the headlines recently. So
yeah, and that's ideal because, of course, Erica Kirk was elected CEO of Turning Point, in the wake of the death of her husband. So
right, and CM Punk's been letting his wife. He came out to the yesterday and at the show in Indianapolis. He came out with the shirt on, husband, AJ's husband. So basically, he's taking second stage, right?
Yep. Now, here's where it gets crazy, and as if it hasn't been already. Now, both mathematics and circle equal 112. And when Kirk was killed, it was the date leaving 112 days in the year. Well, the Cubs were the winners of the 112th World Series. And Game 7, where they clinched, began on November 2nd, or 11/2. And this all connects to the birthday of Charlie's wife, Erica, who was born on 11/20, the same digits, 112, and she was born in the year 88. But look at this. This is where, again, it's just crazy. The name Charles Kirk has matching standard gematria with the Latin value of Chicago Cubs. Charlie Kirk, a lifelong fan of the Cubs, both equal 376. Well, if you measure from the date Back to the Future was released to the date that the Cubs actually won the World Series, it's exactly 376 months. But what's wild is that 376 months is also exactly 31 years and 4 months. And of course, 314, the first 3 digits of pi.
Oh, you know what?
Resolves the mathematics of the circle.
Man, just today I had a measurement that was this exact measurement. I was looking at events, and it wasn't this. And I had the exact same measurement, 31 years and 4 months and 376 months. I just don't know what it is now. That's kind of
see if you can find it and see if it's related to what we're talking about, because this is a banger right here.
It's related for sure, because I was looking into Kirk stuff. I don't see how it wouldn't be related. It was something. I just don't remember now what it was. That sucks.
Well, 314 is found in the gematria of Bartman, which is the name of the fan who dropped this ball right here. And then 314 is also Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in the reverse alphabetic order. But, you know, what's so cool about all of this is how it connects to the Yale Skull and Bones Code, right? And we all know that in the year 2023, Yale University, home of the Skull and Bones Society, turned 322 years old. And of course, skull and crossbones equals 223. And Order 322 is the order's nickname. But what this really is, this is really just a tribute to the mathematics of the circle. I mean, it's easy to look at this and think like, ooh, scary, evil numbers. But there is a lot of wisdom that goes into what they've done. The numbers 223 and 322 are the first 2 numbers with ordinal gematria of 314, the first 3 digits of pi. And whether you write out mathematics, circle, or mathematics of the circle, you get 223 or 322 gematria. And the Cubs had that 100-year curse of the Billy Goat, which equals 223 in ordinal. And in 2003, we had the Steve Bartman incident, which equals 322. That's the name that it's well known as, the title of the Wikipedia page as well. And the name Bartman, also 223. So check this out. If you measure from the Bartman drop in 2003 on Charlie Kirk's 10th birthday to the date of Yale's extremely significant anniversary in 2023, Bartman's drop was exactly 1,043 weeks before that anniversary. And this represents the number 143. In ancient Hebrew gematria, the word circle equals 143. And if you write out Chicago Cubs and Chicago, they both equal 143. This brings us to the home run ball hit by Ballesteros. Well, if you measure from Ballesteros' birthday to Anthony Rizzo's, the man he hit his home run to, they were born exactly 14 years and 3 months apart. In fact, Ballesteros was 14 years and 3 months old for the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting. Rizzo dropped the ball 1,143 weeks after Bartman dropped the ball. And Charlie Kirk born 1,043 weeks after George Floyd. Remember, they have the same birthday, 20 years apart. Charlie Kirk also, he got married on May 8th, which, by the way, is the same date that Pope Leo was elected, the Bishop of Rome. Kirk's wedding was exactly 227 weeks before Rizzo returned to Wrigley Field. And 22 divided by 7 is the smallest equation you can use to get pi. The number 360 also equals 227. And George Floyd was exactly 360 months old for the Bartman ball. But again, you just see how these things spiral into the same numbers. Now, this Rizzo visit to Wrigley Field, and I know we're diving into the weeds here, but it's important. This visit was 706 days after Yale's 322nd anniversary. Pi and circle both equal 76. So does Skull and Bones. So does Secret Society. So does the name Steve Bartman, another 76. And if you look at how old Charlie Kirk would have been on the date of that game, it's the 76th prime number of months, exactly, 383. And I guess the last part of this I'll share because it has to do with a very important number, 666. When you write out mathematics of the circle, it has a Latin gematria value of 666, just like mathematical perfection and perfection. And don't forget, this is all important. 666 is a huge number connected to the circle. When you write out 666, it equals the 314th prime number, giving us another extremely solid connection to pi. Now, when Bartman dropped the ball at Wrigley Field in 2003, and remember, 2 divided by 3 equals 666 repeating, that was during Brown lunation number 999. And it kept the Cubs out of the 99th World Series that was played that same postseason. This was a huge ritual for Major League Baseball. Major League equals 999. And then you look at Robert Zemeckis. His full name also equals 999, right? And this Bartman drop during that lunation number. If you're confused about lunation numbers, by the way, every new moon since 1923 has been numbered. So like when Back to the Future went back in time in that movie, it was during lunation 777. And I don't know if this is a coincidence, but numeric ritual, 777, possibly. So yeah, the Bartman ball was during lunation 999. And then you look at Moises Ballesteros, his full name equals 99 and 909. The Cubs won the World Series 66 weeks and 6 days before the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting. And when you abbreviate the name of that high school, you get 666 reverse. Also, Anthony Rizzo's age for the Bartman incident, he was exactly 740 weeks old. The word for circle in the Greek language equals 740. Anthony Rizzo and Charles Kirk, both 74. I believe Turning Point USA is another 74. Kind of like the USA, 74 and 88. Wow, this is cool. Cody, look, the USA 74 and 88, but also 404. And remember, the first pope to come from the USA was born during Brown lunation 404. I think it's American Pope equals 404.
Yeah,
Which equals 440, kind of like Antichrist.
yeah. Yeah, and like I said, Derek, me and you are like the only decoders really focusing heavily, constantly on these lunation numbers. And I'm telling you, people, these lunation numbers are such a big piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. They're definitely paying attention to the moon. I think once you incorporate the lunation number and the lunar counts, both lunar phases and lunar orbits, synodic and sidereal months, I mean, you're going to find alignments to numbers you're already paying attention to. It just seems to be.
You remember back when the Pope died and Leo took over, a lot of the dates I was measuring from during that time, I kept getting sidereal perfect measurements on sidereal, like every measurement I was making. I should have recorded that better, because like during that time when the Pope died, every time I was making measurements, I was getting a perfectly, a perfect day landing exactly on a perfect sidereal of the orbit of the moon. So,
and this kind of even applies to this game with Anthony Rizzo returning to Wrigley. Robert Zemeckis was not only was he, exactly 880 months old, like I pointed out earlier, but that's also 907 lunar phases. And remember, we just had a lunar eclipse on 9/7.
Yeah, and didn't we have a 907 come up? I remember decoding that number back last year during the plane crash of the on the day that Jimmy Carter died. Didn't that plane crash at 907 or something like that? And it was like 907 days after the last plane crash from that company. And plane crash.
I certainly don't recall, but yeah.
But then the 97 too, because 97 is the 25th prime, and the guy Ballesterio, he wears 25.
Oh, that's good. I didn't notice that.
And remember, Rambo, he's been talking all year about the number 25 and why this year is the Back to the Future year because of the 25, because in Gematria time equals 25. Like Rambo's been hyping on the 25 number because of that specific reason. And now you have this guy, number 25, hitting the ball, connected to Back to the Future directly to Rizzo. So like it fits perfect.
So just to wrap this up then for my part, I just want to look closer at the Skull and Bones code. And we call it the Skull and Bones code, but as I said earlier, it's all a tribute to the circle. Like that's absolutely what this is. And when you look at the year that Yale was founded, 1701, look how old Anthony Rizzo was for the Bartman incident, right? Exactly 170 months and 1 week old. So it's a 4-digit match to the founding date of Yale. Also, Rizzo was exactly 171 months old when Moises Ballesteros was born, the guy who hit the home run right to him. The name Ballesteros, 1071. And Ballesteros was 171 months old for the Stoneman Douglas shooting. And remember, this same measurement, this 171 months, I just explored this earlier when we were talking about 143, because this same measurement is 14 years and 3 months. Circle is 143. So it doesn't seem like a coincidence that, you convert this to just months and it's 171, which is coded into Yale's founding date.
I wonder if there's something. I wonder if there's something to this 145 and 143, because we had a lot of 145s, we had a lot of 143s. Well, the number right in the middle of that is 144, which is time. So I'm wondering if that's something.
It might be. A lot of the times they talk about the rule of Kalel, how you can add or subtract 1 from any gematria value. Not something I play around with too often, as you don't really need to when you do this research, but it's worth pointing out that, 2 of the numbers we focused on were directly next to that.
And that's a huge number, really. That's a huge number. So
it is big revelation number. of course. This Rizzo incident at Wrigley Field last weekend was also exactly 263 months after the Bartman ball. And 263 is Order of the Skull and Bones. Also, the new Pope, his birth name, Robert Francis Prevost, 263. Parkland, Florida, another 263. And the shooting in Parkland, Florida, at Rizzo's old high school was 2,063 days before Yale's special anniversary. And skull and crossbones equals 263. And also 885, which is important because Charlie and Erica Kirk got married 885 days before the skull and crossbones anniversary. And just to reiterate that, if I can find the image. I mean, this is something I've been talking about for almost 3 years now, is this date. And it feels like I'm beating a dead horse talking about this date over and over, but it really is significant. And we continue to see how these major events are lined up. So for the end of this, Cody, I just want to point out this guy, Luis Castillo, who hit the ball to Steve Bartman. This is the Marlins batter right here. This guy is also part of the riddle. And just think about this, right? We explored deeply on how the name Kirk actually means church. Well, the name Castillo means castle. Now, my video on Charlie Kirk from last weekend talked a lot about the church riddle and how the death of Charlie was connected to the Mormon church, as he was shot in Utah across the street from a brand new Mormon temple. Well, as far as the castle, this brings us to the Skull and Bones headquarters in New Haven, Connecticut, which is built to look like an ancient tomb, but also has these lookout turrets that remind us of a castle. You could kind of say the Skull and Bones headquarters is a castle. And Luis Castillo was born 18 years and 32 days before Charlie Kirk. Well, 1832 is the year that Skull and Bones was founded. Luis also connects to Rizzo through the number 172, which is his name in reverse. And the Stoneman Douglas shooting was 1,702 weeks after Back to the Future, and exactly 172 months after the Bartman incident. So I do have a couple more alignments down there, but that's the gist of it. You know, it's all the mathematics of the circle, which is the basis of the Skull and Bones code, and all displayed perfectly. You know, the 31 years and 4 months from Back to the Future to the Chicago Cubs World Series, which is also 376 months, matching Chicago Cubs and Charles Kirk. Obviously, this stuff isn't a coincidence. You know, what's responsible for all of this is always up for debate. I think there's a lot of concealment going on by the occult in control of our mainstream media, and a lot of questions about the shooting. I mean, based on the evidence we see, it seems impossible that Charlie was shot by the person on the roof 400 feet away. If he was shot at all, it looked like the bullet came from the side or behind him or something like that. And who even knows the truth about what happened that day? And Turning Point USA in general. You know, I have my theories, but in the end, it doesn't really matter because these numbers line up incredibly well and all connected to this Back to the Future theme that we've been seeing play out for many years. Donald Trump elected just 1 week after the Cubs won the World Series. And now Donald Trump's good friend getting shot in relation to this just bizarre incident with Anthony Rizzo. I mean, what are the odds of this? And that's even what the YouTube video says. What are the odds, right? I mean, that's the whole basis of our work, isn't it? Asking, what are the odds of this? And if only these baseball players knew.
Oh, sorry, Derek. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I'm done.
No, I was just going to say, I wonder who the guy's name is that actually got the ball. Is there any information on that?
No, I haven't looked it up. I don't know if this was like part of Rizzo's crew that he was hanging out with that day. It's something I could look up on the side here while we wrap this all up.
It would just be interesting to see. But yeah, you can finish what you were saying there. Go ahead.
No, I was pretty much done, man. I just I got my numeric part of it out. This is kind of what we do on my channel. You know, we take these events and we look at like all of the connections between these few characters. It's kind of like the science of it all. You know, it's just showing how this is so unlikely that there must be coordination behind it. And I'm not really sure how anyone could doubt that, especially considering the fact that the Bartman incident occurred on Charlie Kirk's birthday. So, yeah, that's about it for me. And it's
Yeah,
I get it says it was an unidentified fan who ended up with the ball.
Oh, okay. Unidentified, huh?
I kind of want to type it out, but I'm sure there's nothing to it. It's just a random phrase. Just shows you can't, you know, we didn't talk about any of these numbers. That's just
264 is just interesting because today's the 264th day of the year. That's the only thing I saw.
Fair enough. But yeah, that's it. I got a few more notes. You know, these posts never really seem to end. So if you want to see more on this, check out my blog. These are my last 4 posts. I haven't done any posts in the last 4 or 5 days. For those of you in the know about my personal situation, my house is almost ready to move back into after the floods last week. And, you know, I do think that the floods that hit my home in Milwaukee are part of this riddle that we're seeing play out, because Milwaukee is even closer to the 88th meridian than Chicago is. And the Milwaukee Brewers are about to wrap up the #1 seed in all of baseball, which I don't know if they've ever done. I don't think they've ever had the best record in all the league. But here we are, both the Brewers and the Cubs, 2 of the first teams to clinch playoff spots. And on August 10th, we had the flooding in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 2025. And if you saw my work, you know about this, but the year 2025 is embedded in the gematria of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And the date of the flood was August 10th or the 10th of August, which are all found in the gematria of the city. And when you add those 3 numbers together, they sum to 414, which is the primary dialing code for Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And this all happened 3 days after I pointed out there was a flood riddle for the Milwaukee Brewers on my channel. But you know what else equals these numbers? And tell me if I'm losing my mind here, Cody, but weather manipulation also equals 225 and 108. And we just had Bob Uecker die at age 90 before the season began. And when you write out Robert George Uecker, it sums to 288, just like weather manipulation. And, you know, just think about it. WM are the initials for these words. That's the same as Milwaukee, Wisconsin, MW. And these cities are 2 of the largest cities in the Midwest, MW, Midwest. So as I pointed out to you just before the stream, there's actually this, I was kind of browsing through the Back to the Future Wikipedia. And there is a part in here that mentions that during the 2000s, the National Weather Service develops the ability to control the weather, being able to predict the end or the rainfall to the exact second. And I was like, what are the odds of this? Because, you know, that was kind of the basis of my video on my personal disaster, where in this video, I show the radar from that night. And it's just unbelievable how these storms developed. You know, nothing was on the radar for the longest time. And then all of a sudden, storms just kept popping up in the same spot over and over and over again. And I've never, I've lived here my whole life just about, never seen a storm anything close to this. And I'm no meteorologist. I don't understand what's going on in the skies, but it just didn't seem natural. And yeah, it leveled a lot of neighborhoods in the city. And it's weird because I did this video and a lot of the commenters said they didn't even hear about this. If there was a major city that got flooded, like all over the entire city, I would think that would be in the news. But with all of this, there was good news for me this week because this was declared a federal disaster, and FEMA visited my house and approved some assistance for me, which was actually a bigger help than I was expecting. So, sometimes your federal tax dollars do go to good. Certainly not the majority of them. But in my case, I guess I'm a living example that sometimes they do. But so I might be taking a little bit of a break, Cody, from talking smack about the federal government for a few weeks. But
Yeah.
sure I'll be back before long.
Yeah, that's I would understand that if you stopped talking about them for a little while.
Just a little bit. I know the viewers don't like it, so I'll get back to it in due time. But I was really blown away by how much aid they gave me. I mean, between the GoFundMe and the assistance I'm getting from FEMA, that's covering over half of the damages that have to be repaired. Which, of course,
Right.
That's not, it's still a setback, but it's not as disastrous as it was when it happened. So,
Right.
yeah, thanks everybody for their thoughts and prayers because they did pay off.
Yeah, and then I was glad to hear that. So I'm glad that at least it's not as bad as it could have been.
Right.
But yeah, so I guess we'll take a few minutes and hit some comments. I know one comment I wanted to get to during the stream that came up was this one with Michael Jordan's first game being on 10/26. So I think I pulled that up. Hold on a second. Michael Jordan's first NBA game was 10/26/1984. Played Chicago. So, I mean, a whole nother riddle there for sure. Well, not a whole nother riddle, probably fits perfectly in somehow.
Well, it does. And it was the connection between Pope Francis and Michael Jordan that clued us into the fact that there was a huge riddle for Chicago and the papacy. And
Yeah.
you and I and many others were all over that well before the man from Chicago got elected.
Yep. Yeah, and again, guys, just to reiterate, if you're just getting into the stream and if you jumped right in, like right during talking about the Anthony Rizzo stuff, you guys are probably going to be confused. It's really important that you watch these kind of streams all the way through, because in order to understand all the pieces and how they do fit and how miraculous it is, it really does, from the beginning of me talking about Trump and talking about Chicago and into what I was explaining, and then to everything that Derek went into. I think it's I just urge you guys to make sure you watch from the beginning all the way through and just see how miraculous it is, especially with the baseball being hit right to him, how it ties perfectly to the Bartman play that goes back to which goes perfectly back to the turning point, as someone mentioned. So and then we find out this Michael Jordan. What's that?
So from Michael Jordan's first game on October 26th, 84, that was 880 weeks before the 9/11 attacks. And I bring the 9/11 attacks up because that morning, the big news story was that Michael Jordan was announcing his return to the NBA. But then the attacks happened and everybody forgot about it.
Mm-hmm. I see. 880 weeks, which is you had that was what was that one for, the 880 that you already had? What was that for in this?
Zemeckis, exactly 880 months old for Rizzo's return to Wrigley.
Oh man, crazy. Well, the funny thing was, I was going to bring up CM Punk too real fast because I mean it's been a while since I've done a wrestling decode, and in a way I'm itching to do a wrestling decode. I'm always itching to do a wrestling decode. But what's funny is, so that means it was exactly 1 year after Michael Jordan's first game that they time traveled. Wow. And that also means that from CM Punk's birth to the day of the time travel was exactly 7 years. And of course, that happened in Lunation 777. And it was 7 years. He was exactly 7 years old that day, CM Punk. And just to bring all this together, just last night, CM Punk and his wife, both from Chicago now, AJ Lee, they won their match against the Vision stable of Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. And again, most of you guys will probably be confused what I'm even talking about, but the point is, this is all Chicago. This guy's from Chicago. He has the same birthday as Back to the Future. Again, 7 years. He was exactly 7 years old on the Back to the Future travel date. And we already showed how that all connects to Chicago. Well, miraculously enough, this connects us all the way back to the riddles I've been talking about all week with Charlotte and the spider web. Because, well, first of all, a spider has 8 legs. And the symbol of these two now is the spider and the web, which is numerically connected to Charlotte's web, as I've already shown. And again, Charlotte's web, Charlotte, where Michael Jordan originally was based, and then he went to Chicago. So it all seems to go back to freaking Michael Jordan, man. Michael Jordan is like such a huge piece, being from Charlotte, and how I've made all these connections to Charlotte over the last week. All these connections to Charlotte, Charlotte's web. And then you think about the one guy that connects Charlotte and Chicago, and it would be Michael Jordan. So, you know, it really is a web. I think I'm going to start using this this term more, because it really is. It's a web of events. If you just look at a spider web, guys, just look at what we get when we look at a spider web. I mean, you can see if you pretend this is a string of events, you could see where all these different events connect to one web.
Yeah, like each string that goes through the web is one number or something like that, and these events that are connected to it just kind of taper off slightly, but they're also synced to these other things. I often use the term a Mandelbrot zoom too. If any of the viewers know what that is, it's like this infinite zoom into a mathematical structure based on a number of formulas, and it's very interesting to look at, but it also reminds me of just events in the earth in general.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just so, it's funny, these things say they have the most beautiful spider webs. And I know we're always on here harping about how nefarious this stuff seems all the time, but in a way it is all super amazingly beautifully connected. And yeah, I mean, you can say that there is, I mean, and just watching this funeral today, it seemed like a whole energy harvest. But I mean, I guess if you are the spider on the web, you're trying to capture the energy or the bugs, right? That's the web. So, I mean, who's the spider? The architect of the universe, I guess, or whatever, the archon. A lot of people are saying in the chat as we were going through. But
they used to call him God the Geometer in ancient times.
Yeah. So I mean, again, that's just, I wanted to bring this up with CM Punk at the end, because this has been a theme that they've been pushing in our faces right now with the spider web. I mean, what's the chances he comes back right now? Well, his wife comes back right now, and then this whole thing with the spider web, because her move is called the Black Widow, and that's why she wears the spider web. And you know, I could probably do a whole video on CM Punk at some point and make a lot of connections, because this guy is one of the most famous wrestlers alive today and one of the most popular. I mean, they chanted his name for 10 years while he was gone and never stopped, really. So definitely a lot of energy given to this man. Even says his debut was October 25th, which is actually the day that the start of the movie begins. So one day before his birthday. But yeah, I just wanted to add that CM Punk. Again, this decode's not really focusing on him, but maybe later I'll talk more about him. But his birthday is 10/26 and Turning Point USA. Again, we already covered all that, but yeah, I think let me just check the chat for any more last second. If anyone has any last additions, we're going to wrap this up in about 5 minutes, but please, I'll just close out for now and I'll add some comments and get you guys involved. Is there anything you guys want to talk about with today's funeral? Did anyone see anything? I didn't watch the whole thing yet, but as I showed you, Trump was talking specifically about Chicago. So someone in the chat also mentions, Agent D mentions that Terminator 1 was released on October 26, 1984. Wow. Well, that's on the day Michael Jordan debuted and exactly 1 year before Back to the Future. So, and again, as you mentioned, it's a time travel movie, that movie. So that, I mean, wow. I mean, there's so many parts that we could put together. But that's, now I'm going to have to look into this. Terminator 1, Michael Jordan, Back to the Future, CM Punk, how all this connects to that date, 10/26.
Schwarzenegger became the governor of California, which equals 88.
Yep. That's a good one. So yeah, you guys will have me curious about that. Maybe I'll look more into this today or tomorrow. But yeah, someone's also mentioning what we mentioned earlier. Cozy is mentioning October is actually the 8, which is 2 + 6 is 8. So you got the 88. Yep. That's a big part that I never really noticed until just today. So makes sense. Joseph saying that Erica Kirk put up the devil horns. Not really surprised. Just as Christian Kirk was playing, all this was going down as Christian. And just what I mentioned in my post today, guys, they were playing Christian music. It was literally I felt like I was in, I thought I was in like a Christian service from my childhood. I mean, all these people doing their hand raisings, this is what it was. I mean, on a Sunday too, no less. So it was one big church service, and then you just happen to have Donald Trump himself ending the church service. How about that? Donald Trump has become the pastor, almost like the mockery in a way.
He was the guy who announced Charlie's death, whereas you would think it would be like a family or a friend or a doctor. Nope, it was the president who announced his death.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in the chat kept saying as we talked the whole thing that Charlie didn't die. Everyone's getting so worked up about that, guys. Yeah, he probably didn't die. Or if he did die, then we don't know exactly how it happened. But we know that it's a big energy harvest. That's all I can say is I just feel like it's an energy harvest. It's super energetic. So
and what frustrates me is that, you have some people arguing over whether or not, people should be celebrating that he got shot. And then you have another layer of that where people in decoders or other truthers arguing over whether he's dead or not. And it's like, guys, we're being played in some fashion. Don't get mad at each other because you don't agree about what the exact event was or if it was AI. I mean, it's too much. And well, I think people like to think they know because they've been preached to over the internet, but there's so many possibilities out there.
That's what I mean. Is like, I don't know for sure. I don't have 100% concrete evidence that he was or was not dead, or if he or he was shot or was not shot, or how he was shot or was not shot. I don't have 100% proof or of concrete evidence. All I know is that it seems nefarious in a way that it's a way to just again fit into the energy harvest and to bring these riddles together as they don't normally fit together. So I mean, Yeah, I mean, but I understand why people they want it to be clear that it's something is nefarious going on here, but and I get that. But I just saw a lot of comments and as we were talking saying that he didn't die, and again, I don't disagree. I can't say I disagree because there's a chance he didn't. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah,
and my
that's a good comment. Every time I see a comment, it's like, "Oh, he's not dead." It's like you don't know that. I mean, the footage looks like he died. I mean, again, there's a lot of inconsistencies with the story surrounding it that can certainly make you question it. But yeah, none of us know.
yeah, and then the video itself, obviously with the ring thing, the ring moving, and but I've watched multiple videos where you can. There's a guy like there's this theory out there that there was a guy in sunglasses who shot him from the front with some sort of like palm pistol. I don't know if anyone's seen that, but it's been.
It's ridiculous.
But I mean, it looks like it could be like when you watch the videos, it looks like that there's some guy doing some weird thing with that could be a something like that. So, but again,
To the
I
front or to the side?
yeah, it's to his front side, and like as a guy in like a brown shirt with sunglasses who's like holding on to the railing, and it looks like as soon as the thing happens, he's like kind of getting his arm in position, and then you can see he's doing something weird and scratching his shoulder, and it looks like there's a gap between his finger where there would be a palm pistol. If you look them up, there's like a thing called a palm pistol, and it fits right in between your fingers, and you can shoot through it. But again, I can't even with that. I can't see 100% proof that that's what happened. But that guy right there is really weird what he did. Like there's no, even if you don't know what's exactly going on there, it's still very weird how he acted at the exact moment like of the shot and what he was doing at the time of the shot. In fact, Derek,
you have the guy who's saying he did it, and then they arrested him, and then you have the other guy who's celebrating after it happened. Like there was obviously people in the know, you know.
yeah, and what's funny is going back to the guy that I was just talking about with the palm pistol, the guy, one of the main guys online I'm seeing on Twitter, like pushing that theory is Val Venus.
My brother met that guy. You know, that's funny.
Yeah, so it's the wrestler Val Venus. He's like his whole Twitter account right now is all about that guy, like saying that that's the guy who killed Charlie. I found that very interesting, considering it's another wrestling connection. But yeah, and again, there's all we know, guys, is what are we here? You know, like, and yeah, it was Not of This World also says she saw that footage. He barely lifts his hand. I don't see how he could aim and make a kill. Yeah, I also don't see that. It seems, but what he is doing at the time of that makes me wonder if they set that guy there just to cause another theory about who might have done it. Just the way he moves and what he does. I don't see how he could accurately shoot him from that angle either. That's the reason I don't fully believe it. But there is some interesting connections with that. But the point is, we're all here together to look at this deeper, and we're already all aware here, most of us, that there's something not completely right about it. And I think that's all we need. That's where we can stop. If we can all agree that this is something a bit nefarious is going on here, what no matter what happened, and that's why I like the numbers, and I think that's why Derek likes it too, because we can prove with the numbers that there is something going on, whether it's God or whether it's a layer of that, whether it's a bit of both. I always think it's a bit of both. But yeah, I think, and Candace Owens, even going to her, everyone keeps mentioning Candace Owens. I mean, she had like, man, hundreds of thousands of people watching her YouTube live stream the other night. Like hundreds of thousands of people on one live stream on this Candace Owens. And she was exposing that she saw supposedly the guy who took the camera footage from behind the shooting, because after the shooting, some random guy got up on a chair and got to the camera behind Charlie Kirk and took the footage. And then apparently she was questioning this guy who she apparently used to work with. And she watched the footage from behind. And she said the thing she got away from that, or she took away from that footage, was that it's not what she saw, but what she didn't see. And what she didn't see was an exit wound or blood from behind. She only saw nothing. She saw nothing from behind. No exit wound, no blood. So that then she questions, well, the police said that that they couldn't find the bullet. So how did they not find the bullet if there's a bullet and it has to be in Charlie Kirk? If there was no exit wound, the bullet surely didn't just skim him. It looks like it went directly in him. So it would be inside of him, or how does the bullet leave him without there being an exit wound? That's the thing she was bringing up. So
yeah, it's very weird. I'll just leave it at that, I guess.
So yeah, that's just going over what some of you guys were saying in the chat and just kind of clearing up a bit of that. And of course, I know Candace is also, I mean, look at how many people she had watching her stream. It's obvious that and just the way she talks, she's very like, she has an energy. Yeah, she has an energy about her that definitely seems like she's in on something. So yeah, and some people are saying 10/14 will be an interesting date to watch with Charlie Kirk this year. In my last video, I mentioned how King Charles will turn exactly 923 months on that day, and everyone's been talking about the 923 rapture. Meatball says we have the same voice. Really? I don't think. Why does everyone always say that I have the same voice as? People always tell me I have the same voice as Joseph. Now they're telling me I have the same voice as Derek.
I don't know. People think I'm Zach when I talk sometimes. I don't know why.
You don't sound like Zach at all.
Exactly. That's why it's like people hear what they want to hear. It's strange.
Yeah. Anyways, I guess we'll wrap it up. And I just want to give a big thank you to Derek for coming back on again and for sharing his great research to go along with mine. We kind of wanted to do this it was probably like 5-6 days ago. We originally talked about this. And but now we finally did it, and so I'm glad to have you back on, Derek, and glad to hear that you're going to be getting back in your house and you got the help you deserve. So
yeah, man, another week or two and I should be like full-time back to posting in videos again. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be good to get back into some normalcy and have your own space again. So
for sure.
Joseph says we're really all the same person. We're all part of this, guys. Okay, so yeah, Joseph is revealing our rig, how we're all rigged. All the gematria people are really the same person. We just use AI and we pull the woolly over your eyes. Yep, all of us are the same person. Until
we're
I
gonna
show
have
my
to edit
face.
this ending out of me.
What's that?
I said we're gonna have to edit this ending out now.
Yeah. Oh boy. Anyway, thank you, Joseph. Anyways, much love to you. Hopefully everything's going well with you as well. Thank you to everyone in the chat. And as always, make sure you guys hit those like buttons if you enjoyed the content. And also make sure you go over to Derek's channel and hit that subscribe and like button on his upcoming videos as well. And with that being said, have a great rest of your Sunday evening, and we will see you guys very soon with more videos. Right, Derek?
You bet.
All right, everyone. Have a good night. God bless.
See ya.